Protect, provide, and preside. For many men, these three things are what define our role as husbands, as fathers, as men in our community. But if we're honest, most of us probably strive better in one than the other two. On this week, we're talking about how we as men can be better providers by being better equipped financially. We're going to have some time with one of our guest hosts talking about how we can budget better, save better, and just be in better control of our finances. This week on the To Be Men podcast. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the To Be Men podcast, where we come together as men to be better. Better husbands, better fathers, better brothers, better men. If it's your first time with us, thank you for joining us. As always, my name is Jonathan Portillo. I am your host and the creator of the To Be Men podcast. And today, I've got a treat for you guys. Today, we are joined by my friend, Thomas Hobby of MP Financial Coaching. Thomas, what's going on, my brother? How are you?
What's up, man? It's been a minute since I've been introed on a podcast with you.
Yeah, I know. Those of you guys that don't know, actually, Thomas and I started this podcast man, what, 2-3 years ago now?
Years ago.
Yeah, it's been a while. It wasn't the To Be Men podcast at that point when Thomas and I first, had the podcast. It was the Redefining Manliness podcast, but the vision was very similar, right? The heart behind that was very similar. It was having a place where we could teach men to be better. Right. And now,
Yeah.
Thomas and his family moved. At the time, we both lived in Colorado. So it was super easy for us to get together and record episodes. Then he and his family moved to Florida. My family and I moved to North Carolina. And so we kind of went our separate ways. We're still friends. We're still connected, I hope.
We just broke up the band.
Yeah, somebody came in and Yoko Ono this thing. No, that's not true. It was Thomas. He left me first. And so Thomas and his wife and his kids went down there, and I'll let him share about his family a little bit more. But man, they started the Marriage Puzzle podcast, which is, I know, a great podcast for anybody who's in a relationship and really in a marriage, and they just share how to be better husbands, better wives, how to be intimate. It's just a wonderful podcast that I highly recommend. But Thomas, I'll give it to you. I'll give you the floor. Tell us more about, your life, your family, the podcast, and what you're doing here with us today.
Yeah, well, I mean, it started 37 years ago, and it's been going ever since.
Yeah, I was like, don't start that early.
No, yeah. So when we moved from Colorado, I mean, that's kind of where my wife and my podcast birthed out of the Redefining Manliness podcast, because you and I started that way back then, and when we were actually driving cross country from Colorado to Florida together, that's when we started talking about it. Like, we wanted to find something to keep doing together, and we've been married for 17 years now, and we've had some bumps in the road. We felt like we had some opportunities to share our experiences and try and help some other couples, and that's kind of where that came from. So it was fun to get started with you, and that's birthed your podcast and ours, and it's been great ever since. And like you said, financial coaching is a big piece of our marriage coaching. I do financial coaching individually and, with my wife as part of the marriage coaching. And it's just one piece of our coaching that we dive in depth with couples on to really try and help get them set up well for the rest of their future with their families.
Oh, that's cool. So you guys don't just do the podcast, you also do coaching for couples or for finances or anything like that. Talk to me a little bit more about that. What does that look like? Is it people that, they listen to the podcast and they're like, man, that's great. We want to invite you guys into our life. Is it family and friends, a little bit of both? What's that like?
Yeah, it's kind of all of the above. We started gaining clients from our podcast. We just decided originally we want to put something out there to help people, and we started doing that, and people then started contacting us like, hey, would you be able to help us out? And so we just started doing it. We started helping people individually on a more in-depth basis, because on the podcast all we can do is talk at them. So when they reached out to us and we started working with couples individually, we were able to really dive into what's going on. And so now, we've got this whole certification that we've done, and we guide couples through a course of, 8 or 9 different topics to work through. So
Nice. That's awesome. What is that? What are the topics? What are the 8 different topics that you guys kind of work with? Don't spill the beans. Obviously, if people want to do this, men, we talk about this all the time, right? We got to be better husbands. So part of that is getting some help from the outside. So we're not talking about that today, but give us just a quick synopsis of what does that look like?
Yeah, so I'll give you a handful of them off the top of my head. But we talk about communication, conflict resolution. We talk about partner style and habits. Just how each individual has their own personality and things like that, and how that can kind of grind on the other person over time. And so we talk about how to coexist in a relationship with your partner's habits and how they do things. We talk about leisure activities and how to kind of find the same hobbies. We talk about relationship roles, which could be anything from, who works, who stays home. Do both members of the couple work? Do who does what chores and things like that at home? We talk about financial. There's probably a couple that I'm missing in here, but you guys can reach out to us if you want to get the last few. But yeah, so it's a wide range covering all different aspects of marriage coaching. But financial is really one of our sweet spots. We really dive into that one as in depth as the couples want to go. We're comfortable going. But yeah, that's a big one that we really enjoy working on.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, if we're being honest, that's probably a big kind of battleground for a lot of couples and a lot of relationships and a lot of, whether it's a marriage or whether it's, boyfriend, girlfriend getting ready to get married, like finances tends to be sometimes a thorn in the side of some relationships, whether, right, you're getting two people that one of them's a big spender, one of them's a big saver, and now they're both together and one of them wants to keep spending and the other wants to keep saving. And so I figured a lot of your calls are probably related to finances, which is, one of the reasons we wanted to have this podcast, right? I mentioned in the intro that as men, our role is to provide. And now, things have changed, times are different, but we still want to be able to provide some sense of security, some sense of financial stability to whatever relationship we're in, right? If it's within our marriage, great. We want to have security and stability. If it's, we're getting ready to get married, we want to make sure we're planning for the future. Or if it's just, we're just individuals and we're still trying to be, good members of society, we still want to make sure that we're paying our bills on time or doing things like that set us up financially. So we'll spend the most of our time talking about that, but share a little bit about your history in finances, right? Because you did the financial coaching before you guys did the podcast together. You've been doing finance for quite some time. You're a business owner. You've kind of done that. So share a little bit about the Thomas finance story.
Yeah. So I've been doing kind of in the world of finance. I've been in for since probably like 2008. So I don't know, however many years that is to 2024.
It's a long time ago.
15, 16 years, depending on kind of when you start it. We bought our first business in 2008 together. And so I learned finance and budgeting the hard way. I made all the mistakes on my own, did everything the super hard way and figured it out and, lost money, lost a lot and then, rebuilt. Fast forward, got a job. That's how we met. We worked at the same place, ran the finances at that place, continued on. I eventually ended up not working there anymore. And then during that time, I got laid off right before COVID started at the beginning of 2020. And so I started doing some temp accounting work and I was like, you know what, I got to do something a little more to keep bringing in some income because the temp work was just kind of sporadic. And so I started doing financial coaching individually with, married couples, with single people, anybody who needed it. And just started helping people with their own individual budgets and finances to kind of work through that. That's kind of where I started my financial coaching back in 2020, and I've just kind of carried it all the way forward. And now we just integrate that as a very specific part of our marriage coaching that we do. And so yeah, it's been a fun ride. I mean, we now own another business again. We own a gym here in Florida. I'm actually part owner of the corporate team. So I'm the CFO of the corporate team, and I also own my own individual location. In fact, just last week, I bought out my business partners, and so now I'm full owner of my individual location. So I've been around the block with money, ups and downs and all over the place. So I kind of know. I kind of know what's going on. Doesn't mean I don't make mistakes still, but I've got a good handle on it.
Yeah, no, that dude, and congratulations on that, man. Like you mentioned, we met what, 2016, 2017. And so just
Yeah.
watching, being a part, being on the same team for a while, and then watching you kind of step out and spread your wings has been awesome. Seeing you continue to grow and take over the gym and be a CF, like, that's, dude, super proud of you. That's awesome. I'm glad that your family is doing well because of your commitment and your willingness to just step out in faith, right? Which is something that's big to both of us, right? We're both men of faith. And so being willing to just
Yeah.
step out and say, all right, I'm trusting God on this. I don't, right, getting laid off before COVID is nobody's plan A. And yet,
No.
you stepped out and you're thriving. So I applaud you for that, man.
Thank you.
You said something at the beginning of kind of your story, and it's really kind of the point of this podcast. Is you said, I made a lot of mistakes. I didn't know what I was doing, and so I learned the hard way. One of the reasons for this podcast is to share with other men what things to do, but also what things not to do, right? What mistakes to avoid, what stumbling blocks to work around, and say, hey, I've made some mistakes over the years. Chances are you'll probably make some of the same ones if you don't avoid them, if you don't go out of your way to find some mentorship, find somebody that can teach you and share with you. So listen, this podcast is great. Any podcast that you're taking in is great, but I'm going to encourage you guys, wherever you are, find somebody to mentor you and to walk alongside and say, cool, I want to see the mistakes you made so that I don't make them myself. Let's jump into a little bit, man. So we're talking about men. We're talking about, right, one thing we say here at To Be Men podcast is that we want to be better today than we were yesterday. Now,
Yeah.
tomorrow will also be today. And so that means,
sounds familiar.
yeah, right?
That sounds familiar.
There's a few
I
things,
feel like that was a tagline from somewhere else. I think I might earn a royalty off of that one at some
there's
point.
some things that stayed the same and some things that changed. I had hair when we were doing Redefining Manliness. I think you
And
had hair.
hey, I did, and I copied your thing, and so
man,
here we are. And I also didn't have a beard until I met
That's
you.
right.
So
I'm gonna have to find an old clip. I don't know if you still have those or if I still have those somewhere. I'm gonna have to find an old clip and throw that up for you guys who are new to the podcast family. But we talk about, right, be better today than you were yesterday, and so that means yesterday I wasn't saving, today I'm saving. Yesterday I wasn't preparing, today I'm preparing. Talk to us a little bit about, what are some principles that every man should follow when we're creating a budget so that we can ensure some stability and some growth for today and for tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one thing I can say is tithing should be at the top of your budget. And so, for those of you who may not know, if you're listening to this podcast, if you're not a Christian, tithing is 10% of your income going back to the church. And so, I would encourage you, if you're not a Christian, to find Jesus first of all. But if that's not your thing, then giving 10% of your income away off the top of your budget is a vital piece, because that's going to allow you to feel in a positive way like you're not as bad off as you might think. You can always help somebody else. You can always be generous to somebody else. And so that will just change your perspective on your financial situation. If you're giving that 10% to somewhere, it's like your money is being spent in a good way to help humanity in some way, and or to help someone who's not as well off as you are. And so doing that is probably the first thing you need to do. If you're doing your budget and you're tithing, or you can't find money to give until the end of your budget, then you're doing it wrong. Your budget's upside down. You got to flip it over and put that 10% up at the top before you start doing everything else.
Okay, that's pretty good. So you're saying,
so
sorry, go ahead. I'm just going to step in and be like, 10%, that's solid. Keep going.
So then the next thing that I would say is saving. So you got to tithe first, you got to give first, and then you got to start saving. And so good benchmark for savings is 15% of your income. So I think that the first thing you need to do is, like I said, tithing, but then 15% of your income is going to go towards saving for the future. First, you want to start with an emergency fund, so that way you've got a nice little cushion if things go sideways. It's recommended that you save up, between 3 and 6 months of income for yourself. Sorry, not income, but expenses. Whatever your expenses are each month, save 3 to 6 months of that. I mean, if you get into a, bad car accident and can't go to work, having that money saved up for 3 to 6 months will get you by, and then you can kind of rebuild. So first you start with an emergency fund. Then once you've got that built up, then that 15% can transition over to investing and building your future savings for when you retire, for that legacy that you want to leave behind to your kids, to your family.
Nice. Okay, so right now you're kind of doing what 10, 15, 75. So that 75 is kind of what you're living off of, right? You're saying, hey, okay,
Yep.
if I'm making whatever, I'm gonna easy number because I'm terrible at math, $100,000. Some of us, most of
Yeah.
us probably aren't, but let's say that's the number. I'm saying, cool, I'm 10,000 of that. I'm giving back, whether it's like you or me, we're tithing, we're giving to our church, whether, if you're not a believer, you're saying, cool, I'm giving back, I'm donating, I'm helping, kids in need, Salvation Army, whatever the case may be. And so then that next 15,000, you're saying, save that until you have,
Hmm.
3 to 6 months of what you need to live off in case you lost everything, and then
Hmm.
live off of that 75. Cool. That's actually that's pretty good. I've seen some people do like the 20, 20, 60. I'm like, that is crazy. I've seen people do the 10,
Yeah.
10, 80, which is kind of closer to what we're doing.
Hmm.
10, 20, 70 seems to be the normal, but I like that 10, 15, 75 because that 15 gives a little bit of flex. And I think one thing that I struggled with was the 15, I'm saving and investing at the same time. And I'm like, well, I'm never saving enough and I'm not investing enough because I'm trying to do both of them at the same time. And kind of your recommendation
Yeah.
is, hey, save up what you need first, and then from there start investing. I'm not going to ask you what do you think what should we be investing in, because I'm sure there's 1,000 things. But if you had to narrow it down,
Yeah.
you're like, hey, cool. Personally, you've got the gym, I've got real estate, just any sort of investment that will continue to grow your money is what you're recommending.
Yes, definitely, but diversify your investments. Make sure that you don't have everything all tied up in one type of thing. I mean, you can listen to stories if you've got all your money tied up in different real estates, and the bank calls your
Yeah.
notes. And you don't have the money to pay for it in 30 days, then you've lost everything.
Yeah.
But if only 25% of your invested money is in real estate, and then you got 25% in stocks and 25% in mutual funds, various other vehicles, then if one fails, you've still got another nest egg to fall back on. So make sure you diversify your investments. That's going to be the number one thing you can do. And then, as far as, just main principles to work with your budgeting, uh, in that 75% that you're going to be living on, you have to protect I've heard it called the four walls.
Mm.
Protect those first. So not just your house, but your four walls of your budget are going to be your food, your shelter, your utilities, and then your transportation.
Mm.
And really in that order, because you're going to die if you don't eat food.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be okay without shelter for a little while, but you can build shelter, you can figure that out. So
Yeah.
shelter's your next thing. You can kind of deal without utilities if you had to temporarily, but not for long. But you got to do those in order. And then you have to have transportation to get back and forth to work, even if that's like a bus pass or an electric scooter or whatever the situation is. Protect your four walls first, so that of your budget, so that you can survive for your family. And then so all of that inside the 75%, and then you build out all the rest.
Yeah.
A lot of people say like insurance is your next thing after the four walls, because you got to pass off that risk of your investments, your home,
Yeah.
your cars, things like that. That's the next thing you'll have in line after the four walls.
Okay.
But yeah, protect those, and then make sure that your home, your mortgage payment, your rent is a good benchmark to not have that be more than 25% of your take home pay.
Okay. And what's kind of the reasoning behind that? Just to, you don't want to be house broke, right? Like, okay, well, I've got all this much money, but 90% of it's going to my house. Like, if you're spending 90% of your money on rent, we need to have another conversation. I feel like I
Yeah.
feel like you need to
Yeah.
figure something out. Which, I mean, let's
Yeah.
be realistic. There's probably somebody out there that is, because whether they're, they're living it up or they had roommates and now the roommates are gone, there's always a situation. So make sure you're doing whatever you can to kind of get out of that situation.
Yeah.
One thing I've noticed, and it goes for a lot of the things that we say, some things are very specific, right? It's like if you do 2 + 2 = 4, that's very specific. That's very like, it's always going to equal 4. And some things are more
Mhm.
kind of in practice and in theory. Kind of, I feel like finances is one of those things where like, well, this is very specific because if you make money and you spend money, it's going to equal 0. Some of it, it's like theoretical because like, hey, if you live by this, maybe chances are you'll do well. What have you learned in kind of that what's like out of principles and saying my values and my principles move my finances? It's not so much about how much I make, it's about how I manage it. Is that something that you believe in and you kind of seen work for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's really important, because one of the biggest things that we struggle with in society, especially around our finances, is discontentment. And so if you go on any social media for more than 5 minutes, and you're gonna see somebody's life, somebody's highlight reel, and be like, "Wow, I wish I could do that
Mm-hmm.
right now." That could be, the person going on an extravagant vacation. Right now in my feed, for some reason, I've got these videos popping up of this guy who sells private jets to people. I can't buy a private jet right now, but it's super cool to
He
watch.
heard he
But
heard you got that
like
promotion. He's like, oh, Thomas is
ex-
a CFO. He's gonna need a jet.
exactly. And so, it's those kind of things that it's like it can be really easy to become discontent and be like, well, if I can't have a jet, what's even worth it? I'm just going to go blow all my other money
Mm,
so that I can feel good about myself. And that's a terrible way to manage your finances. It's a terrible value to have. And so you have to make sure that you can stay content with what you've got. That doesn't mean you can't strive for better things, but don't strive for it in the wrong ways. Don't
yeah,
be like, I want a private jet just to have a private jet.
yeah,
Why? Like what's like, are you the type of person that needs a private jet?
yeah. No,
99% of us probably aren't,
probably not.
and that's okay. And so, but is it okay to strive to get a car that you want? Sure, but don't go and have a $900 a month car payment on it just to get it now.
Yeah,
That's unwise. That's discontentment. So make sure you stay
yeah.
content and keep that as a core value.
Dude, that's solid. Here at the Two Big Men podcast, we talk about we want to be in regular competition, but not with anybody else, with ourselves, right? I'm comparing myself to 5 years ago me and to 5 years from now me. That's the guy that I'm trying to compete and match up with. But so many of us are like, well, what the guy next door? He just bought the new F-150, and now mine's a 2013. It's 10 years old. It's time for a new one. Which, I mean,
Yeah.
it is time for a new truck, but not because of finances. It's an older truck and it's getting some high miles, and I should probably get a new truck soon. But
Yeah.
you're talking about this being content where you are, but still striving for tomorrow. I think I've heard somebody say, talking about our motto, right, of saying be better today than you were yesterday. Like, well, I'm focusing on today. Tomorrow's tomorrow's problem. Tomorrow's deal. Tomorrow, Jonathan can deal with today's Jonathan's decisions and financial stuff. Can you kind of help us strike, for men specifically, right? You said that we're competitive, we strive, we're ambitious, we want things, we want to go out and hunt and gather, right? That hasn't changed, whether it's been 2024 or the year 24. We still want to go and get stuff and just be men, right? And so help us kind of balance that the difference between enjoying our present life, enjoying what we have today, but still being responsible and planning for tomorrow and for the future.
Yeah, so I think one of the big things that you're kind of talking about here is, and one of the core values of your podcast is you're trying to help men become better men. And so being a better man is not about having more stuff. And so, doesn't mean stuff is bad. Doesn't mean you can't have stuff. I'm not talking about a poverty mentality here, so don't get my words twisted. But like we just said, that example you gave about the truck. Just because, someone else gets a new truck, you're not going to be a better man if you go out today and then go ahead and buy a new truck. You'll be a man with a new truck, but you won't necessarily be a better man. You're not changing anything internally about yourself to
Mhm.
become better. And so if you're naturally trying to make yourself better and competing with your own self to strive for better things and do better and leave a better legacy in the world, you're going to be able to get the truck no problem, because you're going to naturally be making yourself better, which is naturally going to bring you into a higher income bracket and more earnings and things like that. And then you'll just be able to do those
Yeah.
things. So as long as you keep your focus in the right place, you'll be fine. Now, talking about it from a balance perspective, that's the key word, right? Is balancing it. You have to make sure that your present life, that the way you're living your present life is gonna be able to be lived in the future, or living a better life in the future.
Mhm.
So to do that, you have to strengthen the skill of delayed gratification. If you can't do that, you're toast.
Yeah.
If you can't become stronger at delayed gratification, you're done. You're gonna always be broke, and you're never going to be able to. You're not gonna be living a better life in the future, because you're gonna be living the same broke life that you're living right now.
Yeah.
And so you have to learn to delay your gratification in a way that you're setting that money aside for the future. That you're saying, "Hey, future Thomas, this money's for you. I want you to have fun with this because I'm putting in the hard work now so that you can relax on it later." And, delaying that gratification, keeping that 2013 truck for 5 more years, because you don't have a payment on it.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
like,
true.
do the math, find a calculator and run the math on what a new truck payment's going to cost now and how much you can invest that money at and how much it's going to be worth in 5 years. And then come talk to me.
Did my wife call you? Did she say, "Hey, I know you're going to talk to Jonathan about finances. Tell him to not buy a new truck"? No, no, you're
No,
right.
I just know you that well,
Yeah.
man. I just know you.
Yeah, it's a fair point. You're right. I'm not spending any money. Keep things that way. But you're right, man. I mean, we could take a whole episode to talk about delayed gratification, right? We've gotten so used to, it used to be work then reward, and now it's like, no, I want my reward now. Forget the work.
Yeah.
And right, you're talking about social media, like that's propagated everywhere. You see all these young kids that they're just, they're just making videos, and now they're making millions of dollars, or they're playing video games, and they're just flying out doing all this thing. And so everybody's like, I want that. I don't want to have
Mhm.
to go to work. I don't want to do a 9 to 5. Which, hey, by the way, I find something else, man. If you don't want to do a 9 to 5, you shouldn't rely on a 9 to 5. And I'm sure you're a business owner. You probably agree on this 100%, right? Your 9 to 5 should
Yeah.
kind of just be as a placeholder while you build your own thing, or while you go do a side hustle. Which, bro, we can talk about side hustles all day. I'm gonna have to bring you back, right, guys? Make sure you guys leave a comment in the video or on the post on Instagram, saying, Thomas, you got to come back more often so we can talk about all this other stuff that you keep bringing up. But you're right, man. It's getting that habit, getting that discipline, which we talk about all the time, right? Discipline equals freedom. If we're discipled today, if we're structured today, tomorrow we get that freedom. But we have to
Yeah.
keep that in mind, that tomorrow is coming. I think, man, for me, that mentality changed when I had kids. The biggest thing for me before kids, and you've met me before kids. I was like, man, I want it now. I want this new toy. I'm gonna go get this new toy today. Well, you shouldn't.
Yep.
No, I don't care. I'm gonna go do it. And now, now I've got kids, and I'm like, man, I gotta feed them. I gotta make sure they have clothes. I gotta get life insurance. I gotta all this other. I'm adulting now, guys. It's crazy. But I'm realizing the value and the importance of legacy, and of tomorrow, and of saying I'm gonna put in the work today so that I can have more freedom tomorrow. And now freedom for me is being able to provide for my girls and say, hey, whatever I didn't have growing up, you're gonna have. Not because I want to spoil you, but because I want to make sure that I put in the work and reap the reward for future Jonathan and for my future children. Not my future,
Yeah.
my current children in the future.
Yeah. In the future.
We're done.
I got you.
We're done with the two. So right, we're talking about saving money and investing, and really sometimes that can feel like an uphill battle, because right, you're right, we have mortgages and car payments and credit card debt, and we got to buy food, and we got to pay utilities, and we got to get clothes, and we got to do all these things. Like, man, I barely have enough money to spend, let alone save, especially with the pressures of modern life that we're talking about, right? So what are some strategies that you can recommend for men specifically that will help them cultivate a consistent habit of saving?
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things you mentioned there that like just jumped out at me was credit card debt. First thing you need to do is if you have credit card debt, get rid of credit card debt.
Mhm.
Um, now, I think that the best way to think of this is if you've got credit card debt that is charging you 18 to 20% interest, that's just stupid. I'm sorry, it's stupid. Figure it out. Go get your side hustle now and pay off that
Bro,
credit card debt.
sorry to interrupt real quick. I just remember like when, young private in the army, and they're like, oh, I got my first big paycheck. I'm gonna go get myself a Hellcat or a Charger or a Mustang. And man, you go by any army base, and you're gonna find a ton of either pawn shops, dealerships, and just lending places. And you go and like, oh
Yep.
yeah, sure, just sign here, and for the low monthly payment of $1,200 with a 22% interest, you can drive this Charger home. And there's some young private like, I got a steal. So,
Yep,
so-
exactly.
sorry, go ahead.
So get rid of the credit card debt. I mean, it's the interest rate is stupid, and I've heard it said this way is if you're paying off 18 to 20% debt to a credit card, those companies have big buildings and you don't have big buildings.
Mm,
And so
There's smoke in the kids' room. The alarm may sound.
no.
It's going to.
Thomas
I gotta go.
Thomas has to go check because there's smoke in the kids' room. So we're gonna pause right here. Okay, well, so we're back. I don't know what happened. I don't know if you guys heard that, but the smoke alarm in Thomas's house started going off, saying there's a fire in the kids'
Yeah.
room, or smoke in the kids'
Yeah.
room. So like a generous podcast host, I said, stop. It's okay. Go check on your kids, see if they're burning up.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
what happened?
Dude, I don't even know. It dinged, and my first thought was like, because I heard it in my headphones. My first thought was, Pretty sure I set my phone to do not disturb. Like I shouldn't be hearing any noises like coming on. Maybe that's your end. And then like it dinged again. It was like there's smoke and like what? Like that doesn't happen like hardly ever. So we go running upstairs. The two biggest kids come. I've got 4 kids, by the way. For I don't think we talked about that in the beginning.
Oh yeah,
So
we didn't even talk about your family. We'll talk about them.
So the 2 biggest kids come out of their rooms and are like, "What's going on?" Like they're already meeting us on the stairs. We're like, "I don't know." So we're running into all the other kids' rooms trying to figure out what's going on. Nothing. My daughter's like dead asleep. Like nothing ever happened, which is good because she would have been hard to get back to sleep.
Yeah.
The baby like barely fussed. Would have gone right back to sleep, but we scooped him up just to make sure and then laid him back down a few minutes later and he's good. So I don't know. Whatever. Everything's good. Weird malfunction. I don't know. Got some dust. I don't know.
Hey man,
Whatever.
That's fine. It happens. I think this is one of the beautiful things about doing the long distance podcasting, that anything can happen and anything can be edited in post.
Exactly.
So you guys might see this, you guys might not. Well, that's up to me to decide. We'll see how it goes.
Blooper reel.
But before your kids were burning alive in the house, or at least before your computer or Alexa or whatever. Yeah. What do you have? Is that was like a Google Assistant or what was that?
Nest smoke detectors. Yeah.
You just love the government watching you.
Hey.
Huh? All right, that's fine. That's cool.
Hey, look,
I've
it's
got
not-
like 5
it's not
Alexas in my
that-
house. I can't.
It's not that weird like beep beep beep. Like it's kind of
Yes.
nice. It's just hey, this is what's going on in your house right now. You should probably fix this. Like
That's awesome. Well, hey, you made a great point. We actually didn't get a chance to talk about your family at the intro. We talked about you and your wife and the marriage puzzle, and we talked about all of your financial expertise, but we didn't even get to touch on why you're qualified to be on the To Be Men podcast, right? You're qualified as a financial guy.
I'm a
but what about
man,
as a man?
so that's
So there
part
you
of
go.
it.
That's
right?
part of it. But talk to us a little bit about your family, man.
Yeah, so my wife and I have been married for 17 years. Along that road, we've found ourselves with 4 kids. Found ourselves, not like we just, they wandered into our homes or anything like that.
Stumbled in.
They were all on purpose. So, well, I say that. The first time around was twins. So we weren't we didn't have a way to plan twins. But we were trying, but we couldn't force twins. So, but yeah, we got twins. They just turned 10 a couple days ago. Then we've got a 4-year-old daughter, and
I just want to pause real quick because I think when we met, your boys were 3,
probably something like that. Yeah.
3, 4, and they just turned 10.
Yeah.
Like that, I'm just gonna curl up in this corner and cry because my daughter's about to turn 3, and it feels like you and I just met. And all right, go ahead.
Yeah. So I've got a 4-year-old daughter, and then I've got a 20-month-old son, and his journey has been pretty intense over the last, since he was born, the last 20 months. He was born at 25 weeks gestation. So for any men listening to this podcast that don't know how a pregnancy is supposed to go, it's supposed to be 40 weeks long. So he was born almost 4 months early, and spent almost 5 months in the hospital after that. Came home on oxygen, came home with a feeding tube, is still on a feeding tube, can't eat anything orally yet, but he's making progress in that arena. He's had, what else has he had done? He had surgery on his stomach to help with reflux. He had skull surgery, reconstructive skull surgery to help make room for his brain, because his skull was growing in an incorrect way and just putting pressure on his brain. So he's had an eventful 20 months of life, but he is crawling around and making noise, and he's standing up, wanting to try to walk, and so we're on the verge of having a walker in the house.
Gosh.
The final walker in the house,
Yeah.
and so
It's the final walker.
so yeah, dude, it's a little bit nuts in our house. It's amazing that I have enough peace and quiet to actually sit down and record this podcast, but.
Bro, when you said you wanted to
Aside
do it
from
in
the
the
smoke
evening,
alarm going off,
yeah, right. When you said you want to do it in the evening, I was like, "Are you sure you want to do it during the day when the kids aren't home? Maybe when they're at school or daycare or something." But hey, kudos to you.
Yeah.
And man, I gotta tell you, I always watch y'all's Instagram and stuff, and that kid is a champ.
Yeah.
Man, everything he's gone through, and it's just powered through. I was like, that's solid. I think that boy has gone through more life than most young men.
Yeah.
So kudos to you and your wife for doing all that, man, and for working through that. I'm sure it wasn't easy, but I think it's through the fire, right? It's through these trials that we really get a chance to step into our role as fathers, as husbands,
Yeah.
and it's not saying that we do perfect, but we hopefully learn and we get to step in, and when it hits the fan, everybody looks towards dad. And so, kudos to you for stepping up to that and being a good dad, being a good husband, and now getting the chance to share with us a little bit of your expertise, right?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And I mean, for luckily, I'm married, so I have the opportunity to walk this path with someone. So for all the guys who are out there married, if you're going through tough times, just make sure that yes, it's our job as men to like help our family through it, but you have a spouse there who's absolutely
Hmm.
willing to bear the burden with you. So don't be afraid to let them in on your stresses and your struggles, because that's why God put you with them, so that you can have someone to help bear all the burdens going forward. So yeah, make sure you do that.
And this episode is about to shift gears. We're going to start talking about relationships and trusting your spouse. Bro, I'm telling you, we just got to get this on the rotation
Yeah.
because the ideas, I'm writing them down. During the pause, I've got like 4 more podcast ideas to bring you on for, bring the wife on too.
Let's
So
make it happen.
it'll be good. But for this one, we're still talking about finances. So let's shift gears back down to where we were. We were talking about, right, investing and getting ready for the future and preparing for, having that nest egg and for everything that's happening. We talked a little bit about how we kind of get into this mindset of competition and seeing everything that's on social media and not being content with where we are and trying to be like somebody else. And so with that in mind, right, you're talking about, hey, we need to be saving. Well, with that in mind, it seems that savings kind of tends to be an uphill battle because of all the pressures of modern life, right? We have mortgages and car payments and credit card debt and loans and school loans and I mean, everything else in between. What are some strategies that you recommend to help men cultivate consistent, strong saving habits?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that you said that jumped out at me was credit card debt. And I mean, if you're carrying consistent credit card debt at 18 to 20%, then it's just stupid. I mean, just stop doing that. Go get your side hustle, go and pay down that credit card debt and get rid of it, because that's the first thing that's preventing you from saving. That
Yeah.
is all those mistakes that past you made, that current you
Hmm.
is paying for. And so when you bought that Chipotle on your credit card and you're getting charged 18 to 22% with all of your other credit card debt mixed in, and it's going to take you 6 years to pay off that lunch at Chipotle, which, I mean, Chipotle is expensive anyway, so I get it. But let's just say,
Yeah.
when you think about it in that aspect, and it's going to take you
Yeah.
that long to pay off one small thing, then it makes you not want to do it. And I've heard it said that if you're paying interest on credit card debt, those companies all have really big buildings and you don't. So all they're doing is they're stealing from you because you're allowing them to. And so
Mm.
first things first, you got to get rid of that. So that goes back to the delayed gratification that we were talking about before. Credit cards are not the way to get something now. It's just a way to keep future you from being more successful and have a bigger legacy
Yeah.
down the road. So I'll get off that soapbox for a minute, but talking about actual savings, I think that one of the biggest things you can do is just start early. It's never too late to start, but if you have the opportunity to start saving early, start saving early. Um, Compound interest is your money's best friend. And so if you can start saving and investing early, that interest is going to do a lot of the work for you and you won't even have to do anything. Just sit there and watch it.
Yeah.
So start early as you can, and if you're later in life, start now. Do something now. Start putting something aside now. Because yeah, it can feel like an uphill battle. And if you are starting later in life, you really do have a little bit of an uphill battle. But who's kind of to blame for that, right? I mean, most likely some of the past decisions that you've made yourself are probably to blame. So you just gotta
Yeah.
kind of have to suck it up and push through that and do your best and try and get there. There's no get rich quick scheme. I mean, some people get lucky
I'm still
and
looking for it, but no, doesn't have.
but like the best thing you can do is just like be that tortoise. Slow and steady wins the race, man. Just get there
Yeah.
and stack that cash for as long as you can, and you'll eventually have it later in life. So
Yeah.
and secondarily is when it comes to investing and saving, get some help from an investment professional, because they're going to be the ones who know how the investments work. Don't try to do it on your own if you don't know what you're doing. That's a good way to just lose everything.
Yeah.
But make sure you get that help along the way to have someone help build that portfolio for you and help it grow to its best potential.
Yeah, that's solid advice, man. Slow and steady wins the race. If those are guys that follow me on social media, I've been doing a kind of a 1 week, one book a week challenge, trying to get to 50 books by the end of the year. And the first book I read this year was Atomic Habits, and really that's the whole idea of what Thomas is talking about small incremental daily changes build up over time. And so you're saying, well, hey, I'm saving. All I can save is $50 a paycheck. That's not much, but $50 a paycheck over 24 or 25 paychecks over the interest that it's getting over 20, 30 years, like that'll build up, that'll accumulate into something. It might seem small now, but as that continues to build and continues to grow in the future, what started as a tiny little nest egg will become this giant, I don't know what comes out of nest egg birds, this giant bird.
Big bird.
You'll have something great to rely on. Man, Thomas, this has been awesome, bro. I've loved the chance to kind of connect with you again and reconnect. I got one last question. And really it's kind of more of a sit up and you get to knock it out of the park. So as men are preparing for milestones in life, right? If you're getting married or they're buying their first home or they're saving for their kids' college fund, what are some key considerations that we need to keep in mind to stay informed and confident in our financial decisions? If we can't do it ourselves, who should we call to give us some advice?
So the first thing you need to do is just contact me, and I'll help you out with that. But seriously, it doesn't have to be me. Just get some help. Like I said, if you're in an investing stage, I'm not an investment professional. I'm just going to refer you out to someone else. So if you're in an investing stage of your life, go to an investment professional. If you need to learn how to budget, how to save, that's my area of expertise. How to allocate your expenses, things like that. That's my sweet spot. I can definitely help you out with that. But as far as just kind of like characteristics you need to be able to kind of navigate that, be wise. Final words here, I would just say be wise with what you're doing. Make smart financial decisions by thinking about how each decision you make is going to impact your financial legacy. We had that example about the truck earlier. There's an opportunity cost with every decision you make. Your money can only be spent in one place at a time, right? So if you spend it here, what are you saying no to for the future? What are you not getting to use it on in the future? And that might just be saving it up so that there's more of it compounded in the future. So just be wise with your spending, and just kind of circling back one more time, be content with what you have for as long as you can. Just work on that delayed gratification. Keep that discontentment at bay as long as you can. If you got to delete social media off your phone for a while, do that. Just be content with where you're at and with what God's provided you with so far, so that you can make those wise choices with money and just be able to leave a legacy behind when you're gone.
That's solid, man. I love that. And I love that you keep coming back to that, leaving behind a legacy, because that's what it's about, right? We're building all these great things, and sure, we might get the chance to enjoy some of it, but in reality, we're building this for somebody else, whether it's our children, whether it's our community, whether it's the world. We're here to make the place we found better when we leave it. So, man, give us some time, right? If people are reaching out for budgeting or saving, what's your handle? What's your contact info? How can we get a hold of MP Financial Coaching?
Best place to find me is you can go to mpfinancialcoaching.com, or you can go to marriagepuzzle.com if you're looking for marriage coaching. Either one, you can get to the financial coaching through either one. Those both websites, because they're both my businesses, they'll direct to each other. So you can find either one from either one. So check it out there. You can schedule a call with me, and we'll get you some help.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Hey, listen, guys, as always, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a blast. I've loved the chance to just reconnect with my old friend and share some wisdom with you all, right? Because that's what it's all about. It's about becoming better husbands, better fathers, better brothers, better men, and better at managing and handling our finances. Hey, if you're on social media, make sure you're following me over on Instagram at John Portillo. Make sure you're following Thomas at MP Financial Coaching, or Marriage Puzzle. Is it Marriage Puzzle Podcast on Instagram? What is it on
Marriage
Instagram?
Puzzle.
Marriage Puzzle. They've got some great stuff. I'm looking forward to more of their content. But as always, Keep working, keep being strong. Let's be better today than we were yesterday. See you guys next time.